Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving headfirst into a really surprising, maybe even a slightly dark, but absolutely fascinating alternate history hidden right in the middle of Friends. And no, we're not talking about the show getting canceled. We're talking about the very real possibility, carefully laid out in the show's middle chapters, of these characters literally just moving on from each other. So let's dive into this thought experiment. What if the group had actually stopped being friends and just naturally drifted apart halfway through the series? It sounds impossible, right? I mean, Ross, Rachel, Monica, Chandler, Joey, and Phoebe, they're culturally remembered as this monolith, one completely unbreakable unit. But if you look really closely at the events of Season 5, there's this incredibly realistic alternate timeline hiding just beneath the laugh track. What if the massive life events of that specific season actually pushed everyone onto separate paths that simply never converged again? By the end of this explainer, you're going to realize just how incredibly fragile this iconic TV family really was. Let's get right into Part 1, the Season 5 pivot, when six paths diverged. Season 5 is mostly remembered for its peak comedy, but honestly, beneath all those jokes, there is a totally chaotic amount of change hitting the group all at once. For the very first time, literally every single character is moving in a wildly different direction. Think about it for a second. Chandler and Monica are hiding the steepy, serious romance after London. Ross is totally exhausted emotionally and just spiraling after his disastrous wedding with Emily. Then you've got Joey, who is hyper-focused on chasing his acting success and really pushing boundaries to land leading roles. Phoebe is entering a completely new phase of adulthood after her whole surrogacy journey. And Rachel is aggressively, and I mean aggressively, climbing the corporate ladder. Up until now, the coffee shop was the absolute center of their universe. But suddenly, real, heavy adult lives are actively pulling them away from that center. So in our alternate timeline, imagine if Chandler and Monica didn't slowly integrate their romance, but instead became entirely absorbed in each other as a totally isolated unit, right? Just focusing solely on their shared future. Suddenly, two foundational members are gone from the daily dynamic. Then consider Ross. He's dealing with intense loneliness, not to mention anger issues over a stolen sandwich. Without the group dragging him out of his funk, he realistically just retreats into his safe space, his career as a paleontologist. He completely buries himself in academic research and lectures. And then there's Joey. Joey is the glue. He checks in, he visits, he creates those spontaneous moments. If he lands a major role, like that movie in Vegas, that requires months of travel, the group loses its absolute strongest social connector. And Phoebe, she's always loved everyone deeply, but followed her own quirky path. So she naturally drifts into entirely different social circles as she seeks out new adventures. Now, while everyone else is scattering, it's wild to think about Rachel's incredible growth. Think about the Rachel we first met in Season 1. This was someone who relied entirely on her friends just to survive, literally just to figure out how to do her laundry. Now, contrast that with the Season 5 Rachel, who is rapidly learning she can actually succeed entirely on her own in the super demanding fashion world. In our alternate timeline, she leans into this professional growth even more aggressively. She's taking on more responsibilities, more late-night networking, and way more opportunities outside of the core group. And here's the hard truth about human development, you guys. As her confidence grew, her actual need for constant daily group interaction naturally decreased. That brings us to Part 2, how friendships actually fade, the anatomy of growing apart. This is perhaps the most terrifying part of this whole thought experiment. No dramatic fight, no massive betrayal, just distance. In this realistic alternate timeline, we really have to recognize that friendships rarely end with a catastrophic explosion. There's no dramatic screaming match in the pouring rain. Most friend groups that seem completely inseparable don't break. They just sort of quietly dissolve. We can actually trace the tragic, slow creep of that exact distance. This is exactly how it would happen to the group, and frankly, it's kind of how it happens to most of us in real life. It starts small. Step 1, Chandler and Monica have a date night, so they miss a group dinner. Okay, no big deal, right? Step 2, Joey is filming on location, so he misses a whole month of coffee shop hangouts. Step 3, a missed month turns into a missed year because Rachel is working super late and Ross is totally burying himself in his lectures. And then comes the final, truly heartbreaking stage. Step 4, the phone calls become way less frequent, and the inside jokes, they simply stop evolving. You essentially become frozen in time with each other. By the time anyone in the group actually realizes what's happening, it's already way too late to fix it. Moving on to Part 3, the empty orange couch, the bleak reality of adulthood. So, in this alternate timeline, they eventually hit a point of no return. The shared history remains, but the shared present slowly disappears. They would absolutely always have the memories of the fountain, the high-stakes apartment switches, the early days, but in this timeline, they've effectively become strangers with great memories. Their lives just aren't actively intertwined in the present tense anymore. I want you to really picture the coffee shop on a random Tuesday evening, exactly 1 year after season 5 ends in our alternate reality. Ross arrives after a super long day of teaching. He looks around and nobody else is there. Rachel is stuck at the corporate office. Monica and Chandler are at home, deeply focused on their own private world. Joey is in another state on a film set. And Phoebe is across town making entirely new memories with totally new people. That famous, iconic orange couch just sits mostly empty. And you know what the saddest part is? It's not empty because anyone is holding a grudge. It's simply empty because life happened. This scenario entirely grounds a sitcom fantasy in the messy reality that we all actually live in. Shows like this present an illusion, right? A fantasy version of adulthood where somehow 6 working adults magically have perfectly aligning schedules and infinite free time at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday forever. But real adulthood? It means priorities shift. Careers demand way more time. Relationships evolve. Life gets incredibly messy. Honestly, the alternate timeline where they drift apart, it's actually the most realistic outcome for a group of people experiencing that much simultaneous chaotic life change. Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, The Real Meaning, the hidden lesson of Season 5. But here's the thing, this alternate ending actually reveals a really beautiful truth about why this show has resonated with millions of viewers for decades. It wasn't actually about 6 people who magically never drifted apart. It was about 6 people who, in the face of massive life changes, kept actively choosing not to. Every single one of these major life transitions provided the perfect, absolutely natural excuse to scatter. When Ross was at his lowest, they could have just let him isolate. When Rachel's career took off, she could have totally left them behind for a new corporate crowd. When Joey had literally no money, the lifestyle differences could have easily driven a wedge between them. When Phoebe lived by her own rules, or when Monica and Chandler became a serious couple, they could have so easily closed their doors to the rest of the world. The ingredients for separation were all right there. Different goals, different lifestyles, different futures. Yet they continually fought against the current of real life to find reasons to reconnect. The group wasn't extraordinary because they experienced an absence of change. They were extraordinary because of their absolute willingness to stay connected despite it. So the ultimate takeaway you should pull from this explainer is simply this. Friendship isn't maintained by coincidence. It is maintained by effort. The hidden lesson of Season 5 is that the empty couch never stayed empty because they actively, deliberately showed up for each other, even when adult life handed them 100 perfectly valid reasons not to. They put in the work that the real world demands if you want to keep your people close. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to ponder one final question. If you could change one moment in the series to create an entirely different future, which moment would it be? Because as we've seen today, the smallest, seemingly insignificant decision, a missed coffee, a secret kept a little too long, an extra hour at the office, can literally alter the trajectory of an entire story. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the fragile bond of this iconic group. Keep making that effort in your own lives. And hey, never let your orange couch stay empty for too long.